What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel and another Blood on the Clocktower video where we're going to be looking at some homebrew characters. Now, over the last couple of days, we've seen kind of the first attempt where I put my ideas into the characters, and then we got to playtest it on our regular Monday game, and then based on the feedback of those plays, I've now adjusted things. This is basically what the kind of regular board game design method is like. You build a prototype, you take an idea and try and communicate that with the components. You then get to playtest it with some players, and then based on kind of your gut feel as to how things went and also playtest the feedback, you then go, okay, what needs to be changed, what's too strong, what's not strong enough, and then change things. And that's what we've done here. So you will recognize most of these characters. We have a new minion, and I've changed which outsiders we have. Now, the original idea was to pick the outsiders that were most likely to get themselves executed. We still have some of that, but we will see why, and they've changed for a much more fun reason. But otherwise, like kind of regular spread of townsfolk is the same, except we now also have the pixie, because this is a low misinformation script, but this is a lot of like madness and double claiming type scripts. So I wanted to encourage that a little bit more with the pixie. We already have the imitator, which is like the pixie with downside. But let's get into it, shall we? Let's start with the trumpeteer. So the trumpeteer started as evil cannot win while an outsider lives. Now, this works fine if you have a couple of opportunities for evil to win the game earlier. I'm talking Fearmonger, I'm talking the good twin being executed, Signature represents a win condition, which was designed to have an additional one for the trumpeteer, and stuff like the Vortox if there's no execution. And the trumpeteer is good at stopping that kind of stuff, but it felt kind of niche, and it also meant that the trumpeteer would have to try and find an outsider to maybe trust them. Which, you know, can be tough. Some of the outsiders we had on the script before would never ever want to come out. And claiming the trumpeteer would be a way for minions to potentially get them to reveal themselves, maybe find a damsel or something like that. So instead, each night learn one in-play outsider ability. Now this is specifically worded this way where it's not an outsider character, it's an outsider ability, and that will become relevant later on. But if it's just a regular outsider, you would just learn the barber text. You would learn the recluse text, and you would go, oh, there is a recluse in play. But if you learnt text that doesn't match an in-play outsider, you would go, this is something different. And we'll get to that. Next up is the channeler. So the original channeler was basically doing a shitty job of what the Spirit of Ivory does better. Because we had the Mezephiles and the Tormentor, which would potentially make extra evil players. The channeler's job was to either find that converted evil player and make them good, or hit a recluse and make them good, or hit the faux paw from the lycanthrope and make them good. Now, didn't quite go according to plan, but this new version of the channeler still kind of fits the vibe of the person that cleanses away evil spirits. And the channeler now reads, once per game at night, asterisk, choose a player if they have an outsider ability, not an outsider character, an outsider ability. They lose all abilities and reminder tokens and learn this. Now, let's elaborate on a few of these pieces. If they have an outsider ability, you may remember, if you're a long time fan of the channel, I had a custom minion that I love very dearly called the Pit Crone. Its ability was each night choose two players. They gain a not in play outsider ability from the Pit Crone list, and the Pit Crone list is basically just like outside abilities that don't fuck up the game if they get put in play in the middle of it. Stuff like the Heretic was not on the Pit Crone list, for example. And then if a player had that super detrimental ability, the channel would be able to cleanse it. But it would also cleanse whatever regular character they are. Now, let's talk about the next slightly more complicated part. They lose all abilities and reminder tokens. So anything afflicting that player that is represented by a reminder token is removed. Now, this part might be completely bonkers insane. but I want to try it out before I, commit that it's bonkers. So let's look at some of the reminder tokens we have. The imitator known character. I'll recap what the imitator does in a minute, but basically, the imitator known character is the character that dies if the imitator breaks madness. So if they have that reminder token removed, they cannot die to the imitator ability. Stuff like the librarian, it doesn't matter because the librarians already received their information, and I guess it could mess up the balloonist order, but I don't think that's a thing that matters. As a storyteller, you can just not do it wrong. It could mess up the juggler info if the number of corrects is wrong, but it can remove the faux pas, so you'll be no longer registering evil. It can, in theory, prevent you from dying by removing the thing that kills you reminder token, but it's not a thing that I use. I don't know how much I want to believe in that. And the channeler goes before the demon kills, so I think by the order it would be added later anyway, so I don't think this matters. The princess adding a thing to the demon doesn't kill, but it's really unlikely that the channeler would be able to turn the demon away from being a demon. The red herring being removed. The village idiot drunk token being removed. The person the pixie is mad about being removed is a little awkward. The barber haircutting tonight is could be really good. The person who is puzzle drunk, they can remove the used guess from the puzzle master, so the puzzle master could guess again. The moonchild dead and needing to pick a player. The good twin, the channeler can stop a player from being the good twin. The Serenova's mad player, and so on. Some of them get a bit more fucked, like the marionette is absolutely a clash with the channeler, and we'll get into more specifically why that does not function at all in a minute. But it's not like the first time the marionette's had a chinks, right? So I think that's fine. But I had the marionette originally, and then I removed it to add the new minion, Oust, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's channeler. Channeler, I was like, what if we just made it just the most powerful cleanse possible? And so I'm curious to see how that goes, if that's just completely cursed or not. In theory, with the evil twin, it could just be a good coin flip, right? And then maybe it works out, but I don't know. It would be a really funny bluff for the evil team to bluff channeler and then say that you pick the evil twin. The evil twin's like, yeah, I'm not my thing anymore. But they have to have an outsider ability. They have to have an outsider ability. Now, the evil twin could be able to get an outsider ability, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, here's a quick recap on the imitator. You start knowing one in-play character. You are mad that you are that character, or that character dies tonight, even if you are dead. This version of the imitator has been given dies tonight. It was always supposed to have dies tonight, but when I copied it onto the script before, I copied from an old version that did not have dies tonight. That's just been fixed. Basically, if you are shown the balloonist, you are mad that you are the balloonist until the balloonist dies, and then you can break madness so the balloonist would not die. In the game we played and had uploaded yesterday, the imitator was mad that they were a village idiot. If they broke madness, every village idiot would die. But there was only one, so it wasn't a big deal. But I wanted it to seem more stressful than it actually was. And so it's like I said, pixie with downside is kind of what we're going for here. Alright, next let's talk about signature. Signature I have not changed. We didn't get to play it in the playtest game because I think it needs a 12-13 play count. And the feedback from the players was that the way that it was worded was confusing. And so I just want to quickly show what some signature maths would look like. Based on the position of the players of the game, this is a signature win. This is a signature win. This is a signature win. It doesn't matter what order that they happen in. The way to prevent the signature from winning is to have two dead good players next to each other. So if you executed somebody on the first day and then the demon killed someone far away, you have to go, well, I want to execute one of their neighbors to potentially hit a good player and turn off signature. And let's say you execute the clockmaker on the first day. And let's pretend for a minute that Tormentor is not the demon that ends the game if executed, but if you executed Tormentor and the demon killed somebody over here, the signature win condition is still in play because you've killed an evil player, you've not killed a good player. That's kind of the idea. It's kind of forcing clumped executions to try and avoid the signature win condition from triggering. I think it's very interesting. We didn't get an opportunity to see it shine, so I haven't changed it until we're going to test and actually see what it looks like. Next is oust. Now, people's main complaint was that there was kind of no misinformation, no drunkenness and poisoning in the game. So someone got information, they're like, oh, this must be correct. Well, let's change that. Here is oust. Each night, Asterix choose 2 players, they swap seats. One of the good players swapped this way is poisoned until dusk. Now, I don't specifically have any characters that care so much about their location. I could add an empath and stuff like that, and I might before we go and test it again. But the thing that's really interesting about the oust is that you know exactly who might have been poisoned. And you are able to kind of mechanically understand what's happening. However, oust and signature together are very, very strong, because oust can move people to sign the signature and potentially guarantee that the signature is going to win. So it puts a lot of added pressure on that victory condition, and so the trumpeteer is much more powerful. That's the goal. We're trying to make, put pressure on the good team so that stuff like the trumpeteer is so much stronger. Now, that was kind of the idea. I like having just like a little bit of poison. And so the oust has some really interesting gameplay where one of the good players swap this way. If you swap 2 evil players, neither will be poisoned. If you swap 1 evil player, 1 good player, you guarantee that that good player is poisoned. So if the oust finds out who the trumpeteer is and swaps them with themselves, the trumpeteer will be poisoned, the signature win condition will activate. That's kind of the idea. It's like a slightly more complicated poisoner. And sometimes there might be characters that care about the locations of things. Like I could add a chef and I could add an empath, and then watch their information get fucked up as the oust moves shit around. If you were the chef, you'll probably hate that. But if you were the chef, you'd probably take a screenshot of the plays at the beginning of the game and go, okay, where was everyone sitting? What are the pairs, actually? Which I think is interesting. All right, now let's talk about Eviction, one of the 2 new demons. Eviction hasn't changed. So we did play Eviction, and players said that it was too confusing to figure out what Eviction does. We also only got 3 Eviction kills because we had a princess activation, and the abilities that the Eviction gave out were of a specific category. But people were like, we had no idea what that potential downside could have been. I didn't hear anyone trying to solve for Eviction. And so instead, I'm keeping the text the same, but when playing, I'm going to be like, this is a madness or misinformation ability. That's what the detriment will always be. It will create something to make misinformation. It will create something to have madness. It will make people say things. I don't want it to, on the text, specifically say it must be madness, like the way that Empire does, because I don't want the first kill of Eviction to go through and people go, well, I'm mad about this thing now. It can only be Eviction. And you could potentially hide it in potentially like a Serenovus choice or something like that, and that's why the Serenovus has replaced the Pit Hag. Because in the previous game we had the Eviction notify a player that they had been Pit Hag turned into something that they didn't think could have been possible. That was the idea. And so what I want it to say is players killed this way register as an outsider, and something that generates noise happens. Like someone learns something wrong, the gong rings, and Fearmonger shows something like that. Something crazy that happens that adds noise to the game in the way that the Wizard does. The Wizard adds a lot of noise and a lot of conversation to the game. That's kind of what Eviction is trying to do. But we skipped over something very important. It says, players killed this way register as an outsider and gain a detrimental ability. The channeler may not say an alive player. So the channeler can potentially cleanse a dead player that has a really horrible Eviction detrimental ability. That's why I said specifically outsider ability. Now, and the trumpeteer also says outsider ability because, you learn an in-play outsider ability, not necessarily an alive outsider's ability. So the trumpeteer could learn what the ability is that the Eviction has given a dead player. And so if it is something super detrimental or like the players really need to know that dead player could be notified and the trumpeteer could be notified, which helps build, this exists credibility, but also means that it's less likely to be noise and more likely to be actioned on if it's something that requires action. The idea is for it to just be noise, but we can, we have safeguards in place if we want to do something swingier, if we want to do something crazier because we think the evil team is struggling. And so I think that is kind of cool. All right, now let's talk about Tormentor. Now, Tormentor before turned outsiders into allies. I was going to say minions. It's not quite correct. They would stay outsiders. They would gain a minion ability and become evil. We kind of decided that was going to be way too strong, and so I've changed it based on a suggestion from one of our players, Rollo. Shout out to Rollo. He suggested that minions gaining outsider abilities would be insanely strong, and he was right, because if you're a minion and you have the mutant ability, you can just go, oh well, I'll give up being the minion and I'll trigger the mutant ability, robbing an execution, taking an execution away off the demon or something like that. Having the damsel ability as the minion, not very good. So that's why I changed up the outsider list to something that would be more specifically detrimental to town. Now, let's have a look at our 5. The Barber. Okay, so if you successfully execute a minion, the demon and another minion could swap. Seems good. You could swap that dead minion with an alive good player, and like you could just put the signature back into play. That seems pretty good. The Puzzle Master. Oh, you've just poisoned someone. Okay, but hang on. You can find out who that one person is. You make a Puzzle Master guess, and if you learn your demon, you know you got the person that's puzzle drunk. It's a really silly mini game to play, but I like it. The Moonchild. So if you do kill the minion, they pick a player that they know is not evil, that will die. So they just pick someone that they know is a powerful info character, maybe, and then that person dies. That seems really good for a minion to have. The Recluse. The Recluse says you might register as evil and a minion, but I do that already. But you could register as a demon. And so characters like the Fortune Teller picking a minion could get a yes. That's pretty good. And then the Imitator. So you, as a minion, learn an in-play character, and then if you claim that in-play character, everything's fine. You got sort of a bluff, everyone thinks you're the Imitator. Or you just never claim that character, and the character that you saw dies. That's pretty good. So actually, Tormentor is really strong. And so that's why I've given them the -1 outsider. And it doesn't do anything special on the way that it kills. It just makes all of your minions gain an additional outsider ability. But it can't double up on them, which is important. And when I posted in the group chat, the first question they asked was like, does not in play mean off script? My intention is no. We have 5 outsiders on the script, kind of for this reason. And the -1 outsider on the Tormentor means that you should always have enough outsiders to be able to use this ability without problem. If it does become an issue, then maybe I add more outsiders to the script. Maybe we just say from the pick crone list or something like that. But that is what it looks like now. When I get a chance to play it again, we can then go, well, what went well? What did not go well? What are we going to try out? What do we need to change? Is this balanced? Is some of these characters too strong? Does the oust actually fit with what's going on? Or is it just part of the signature? Does it just make the signature better? Does the signature need to be made better? That is all stuff that we'll find in playtesting. Sometimes you would just never know if something is working or not, and you need to, see it firsthand to be able to, judge, change, update, make things better, and then try again. That is what it is. You are just playtesting constantly, trying to polish something until it becomes good enough to release. And then after it's released, if you're like Stephen Medway, you continue polishing and continue changing and continue updating stuff and adding new things to it. And then it becomes a game that lots and lots of people play and enjoy. So that's the goal. If you think some of these characters are kind of cool, or if you think that is completely bonkers broken, let me know in the comments. Sometimes I miss stuff. Maybe something like the Eviction is way too vague and I should change the text on it. But until I get a little bit more visibility on that, I don't really know exactly what I want to change the text to. So if you have any good suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Otherwise, I will have a playlist up on the screen of some of the other Blood on the Clocktower stuff that I've been working on that I think is worth checking out. You could just go and see what the first, attempt at this being played looked like, and see how how much people really did try and figure out if a signature was being drawn or not. So maybe go and click on that also. Just click on it. Click it.